Welcome everybody to TruExact Show. I'm here with Brian, Ellie, and we are staying out on the West Coast here. We are talking hockey, baby. Like, this is a special episode. Very excited. You know, one of the voices of the San Jose Sharks, the TV announcer, Randy Hahn. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Good to be with all of you. I've got like bolts of lightning coming out of my head or sunset or something like that. So it's all good.
You look fine. It's better than my drivel in the background. I looked that word up today, too. It works, drivel. So, all right, Randy, before we get into some hockey stuff here, first we like to ask our guests how you got into broadcasting, you know, your upbringing, if it was your lifelong dream and how it started. So take it away, man.
It's actually the most bizarre thing ever, but when I was 14, I used to watch the kids for the neighbor next door, and he worked at a TV station. He asked me if I wanted a part-time job picking stuff up and just, you know, cleaning up and hanging around and carrying boxes and stuff like that. So I went to work part-time while I was still in high school. And a year later, they had a radio station in the same TV station. This is a small little operation in Canada. And they asked me if I wanted to do a radio show. And I said, how much is the pay? And they said $2.25 an hour. And I said, I'm in. And so I got to be on the radio when I was 15. And that's kind of become my life's work. It wasn't a plan. I did have a background in being a sports fan as a kid growing up with the radio, falling asleep in bed, listening to games and stuff like that. But I never really knew I wanted to be in sports. And I didn't really start out in sports. I was just spinning records on Saturday and Sunday afternoons on this small little radio station in Canada and reading the news off a printed sheet that came out of a teletype machine, which none of you can probably relate to. And then it just morphed into more and more. And my dad at some point decided that I should probably get a real job because this would never lead to anything. And I should work in construction with him in the summers and then go into real estate because that's where all the money was. And I tried that and I hated it. And then eventually I just kept doing this. And so far it's worked out as long as I don't screw it up.
Right. So what was your first sport experience?
My first sport that I ever called was the play-by-play of a dog sled race.
Wow.
Yes. Not Iditarod, because that would be like saying, yeah, the first thing I ever did in football was the Super Bowl. Because if you know anything about dog sled racing, and clearly you do, you know that the Iditarod is the pinnacle. That's the cream of the crop. You don't start there. You work your way up through the minor leagues. So this was a small little dog sled race in my hometown. It was our winter carnival, and it wasn't really the play-by-play. It was actually the paw-by-paw. So, that is, I swear to God, that is the first thing that I ever described that was close to athletic. I mean, it was canine athletic, but you know, the driver, or I mean, of course, you guys know this. The person who is on the dog sled, the human, is the musher. The musher, there's some athleticism in there. You got to crack the whip and hang on and, not fall into an icy crevasse and die. So, that's what I did. The paw-by-paw, the dog sled race.
Now, how do you prepare for that? I just have to ask, and when you got into, hey, man, you're going to do the dog race, were you like, huh? Or,
no, exactly. I had no idea, but I had no clue.
Did you sound like an auctioneer, and down the road, very fast?
It was like I was far away up on a cliff, looking down at a frozen river. This is how this was set up. So the dogs are racing down the river. I'm on a cliff with binoculars, looking down at the dogs, and my color commentator is a local, Aboriginal chief of this Indian nation, and he knew something about dogs, and he could differentiate one sled from the next. So I was leaning on him, and it ended up that was it. But I'm sure glad I don't have tape of it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, is there any audio of that anywhere?
No, thank God.
There was. No, would you
that would ruin my career. No, it would be terrible. I'm sure everything I did for the first 2 or 3 years of being on the radio was terrible. We once were, and my buddy, I got him into it too. We're in high school. We're 17, 16. And I got him into the radio station as a part-time thing too, and he started doing the DJ thing too. I mean, they were paying us nothing, so we were cheap labor. It's a small town. It's a town of about 20,000 people, this small little radio station. And once the communication link, this was a wire between the station and the transmitter site, which was up on the mountain in town, was severed by a crane. So we had to all broadcast from this little transmitter shack. And and we went up there on a Saturday night. We're playing. We had no turntable to spin records, so we had to play music off our cassettes. We had our own homemade cassettes, and we're playing our own songs. And our friends were coming up there, and they couldn't call us because we had no phone. There's no cell phones then. So they were driving up to this location and just telling us what to play. And there might have been beer involved, and we interviewed squirrels, and yeah. So
that's amazing.
We had a free reign to do whatever we wanted, pretty much. And God bless the people that gave us the chance to be on this radio station, because we kept them on the air, and we did our thing, and we were kids, and they let us have the keys to this expensive equipment and all that. But it ended up being a spark of a career and a life's work.
Hey, I have to say, we've done 82 episodes, interviews. That's one of the more interesting stories I've ever heard in all the episodes. So, like, God bless, man. I want to pass to Brian first, and then Ellie. Ellie's probably got a lot. So,
I was going to say it's funny how I feel like a lot of people don't give announcers of especially major sports franchises a lot more credit, because you don't realize how important you are to so many people watching the games. Like, everyone knows who's doing the color commentary, who's announcing the game of your team, and even of other teams. I mean, even people like Doc Emmerich, like, I'm pretty sure he's patented the word careened, and nobody else can say that in the world. That's his thing.
I've never used careened.
But the thing is, nobody else can take that, and it's so important to the game and the team itself. How did you kind of find your voice? Because I know, like, if I was ever in that position, I mean, we all have that, like, stereotypical, like, announcer voice.
like the announcer voice, like,
for the shot. Yeah, like, yeah. How did you kind of find your voice?
That's a really good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that before, and I don't really know that I have a legit answer, but it's a process. And when you start out, it's like athletes. The most important thing for an athlete, aside from the talent that he has or she has, is confidence. And confidence is what drives you and boosts you and allows you to become better and become successful in what you do. And I think that the voice that you find for yourself in what I do comes with that confidence. So, early on, and a dog sled race led to this and that, and then when I went to college in Vancouver, I'm Canadian, went to University of British Columbia in Vancouver, and I got a job there at a radio station in Vancouver, which is, now we're talking major market. We're talking one of the top three most populated cities in Canada, like 2 or 3 million people. And working in radio there was a whole, that's like, now that's the big leagues compared to where I was. And I know early on I lacked some of that confidence, but the more you get and the more comfortable you feel in your own skin when you're talking and all that, and that's where you find your voice. And I think that along the way, it was also a real turning point for me was to not take it quite so seriously. And with hockey, especially in Canada, it's real serious. Like, it's like the NFL here. I mean, and it might even be like the NFL times 2, right? Because it's it's intertwined in the fabric of the whole culture and everything. And hockey is the #1 game in Canada. There's nothing else that can compete. And so it's taken very seriously. It's sacred. So because of that, you tend to not want to have a good time and be fun and have fun. And when I moved to the U.S. in 1982, I moved to San Diego from Edmonton, and then eventually started working for the LA Kings. I was prompted to take it a little easy, like be a little more lighthearted about it and have some more fun. And especially in a sport like hockey, which is not native to California, certainly at all. Fans want to be entertained. They want to have a good time when they're listening or watching. So it was a big turning point for me. And I guess where I really found my voice was when I was comfortable enough to also have fun while I was on the air and share a joke with the viewer. And it really did change a lot of things for me when that happened.
That's real cool. I just wanted to hop on what Brian was saying, though, how, you know, that's a good point, Brian, you made. Like, you guys don't realize, maybe you do, but just from a perspective of a fan, like, you guys are intertwined in us as the fan. Like, when like the Yankees, John Sterling, you know, and it's like, you know, knock on wood, when he does eventually pass, it's like, man, that hits hard, because like that's the voice. You listen to these people more than you almost hear your parents' voice in a weird way. I mean, there's 162 games a year in baseball, 82 in hockey, and so like it is really cool to talk to you guys. You know, I just want you to know that you guys across the board are appreciative, and you mean more to our home lives as much as you think, you know, more than you might think.
Well, and I've come to appreciate that from over the years. I mean, this is my 30th year with the Sharks, and as I said, I did other teams and other leagues and other sports. So, I don't try not to get too tied up in that, because I just feel like I'm a regular person, but I do feel the connection, and it's really important to me.
Cool. All right, Ellie, go for it.
Unload.
Tee off.
Oh yeah, no. Okay, so I can't believe you worked with the Kings. Like, oh boy. But anyways, how did you go then from LA or San Diego, LA to then San Jose? How did that?
Well, when I moved to San Diego, it was to do soccer. And actually soccer is where I really cut my teeth. And at the beginning, it was indoor soccer.
Oh, nice.
Which was kind of popular in the 80s, 90s, the MISL. And, there was the New York Arrows, and there was the San Diego Sockers. And that was the team I did. And I was really lucky because I was with them for 10 years. And they won the championship 9 times in 10 years. Whoa. So I was not only getting a chance to do that repetitions, which we all need in what we do to get better. I was getting to do it for a team that kept winning all the time, and kind of raised the level of importance of that team and that sport at that time, because they were the champions almost every year. So that took me to San Diego, and from there, because we were on the same channel that the Kings were on, the Kings recognized maybe something I was doing and put me on the air as their pre and intermission and post-game TV host. And that was my first big TV gig. I was doing TV soccer, but that was my first big TV gig. And then from that point, my wife at the time was also in television, and she got a job in San Jose here in the Bay Area. This was back in 1988, 89. And it was right around the time that San Jose also built the arena, which is now SAP Center, where the Sharks play. And so we had just voted to build the arena. We moved into town, and there was an article in the newspaper about some guys meeting at a pizza place and wanted to talk about, could there ever be an NHL team in San Jose? So I went to that pizza place, and there was a bunch of guys who were just walking around with banners and shirts and drinking beer and belching and going rah rah, we want hockey. But then there was also a couple of guys who were lawyers, and they were good dudes, and they really wanted to actually put together a business plan to bring the Sharks to San Jose, or bring an NHL team to San Jose, to this new arena, because everybody thought the Warriors were going to move from Oakland to San Jose at that time. This is like late 80s, early 90s, because the old Oakland Coliseum Arena was crappy. It was terrible. It was falling apart, and they wanted it fixed, and there was no money to fix it. So it was implied they were going to move to this new arena in San Jose. And we were thinking, nah, this sounds like a leverage play, and we think the best shot is to get hockey. So we formed this organization called NHL Hockey San Jose, which we later had to rename Pro Hockey San Jose, because believe it or not, the NHL is actually a trademark. But so we formed this organization, got about 4,000 or 5,000 people to sign up to try and bring an NHL team to this new arena. Long story short, we attracted an ownership group. We didn't have the money ourselves, but we brought people in who had the money, and eventually it happened. And part of it was because of what we did. So that's how I kind of got into the Bay Area hockey scene. And then once the Sharks actually became a thing, they hired me. So
91.
Yeah, and I'm not going to lie. Part of my reason for being involved in trying to make the thing happen was, maybe if the team does come to fruition, I could be one of the announcers, and that's what happened. And
Bingo.
So far, so good.
That's smart, though.
Bingo.
Yeah,
okay, so I got some Bay Area hockey trivia. What team was there before the Sharks?
Well, there was the California Golden Seals that
There
later
we go.
became the Oakland Seals.
Yep.
And
bingo.
then they left, and they went to Cleveland, and then Cleveland went to Minnesota. It actually turns out that the Seals kind of, in a way, if you track where the franchises moved around, the Seals ended up becoming the Sharks in a very roundabout way, but they're connected through the franchises that moved and the various spin-offs of the teams and expansion drafts and dispersal drafts and all that. But yeah, it was the old Seals. They had white skates at one point.
That's cool. I'm so glad you
you
answered
guys
that
know
correctly, because if you didn't, I would have had to edit that out, because I don't want to embarrass you.
I'm trying to make this a non-edit show for you here. We're trying to be clean.
Go on, Ellie.
Okay, so that was my one difficult question. I'm impressed with your Oakland Seals knowledge, and well done. So then, next thing, okay, so do you interact with the players ever, or like how often, or is it like, obviously now with COVID, I'm sure it's very limited, but like before, pre-COVID, like could you go hang out in the locker room, or?
Well, the way it works, and this year is the huge exception, of course, for everything, but normally we travel on the team charter, so we're on the plane with the players. We stay in the same hotel. We travel in the same buses, and go to the morning skate when we're on the road, and go do the morning skate when we're at home, and go into the locker room and all that. So yeah, we're alongside them a lot more when we're on the road than at home, because they have lives and we have lives. But once we're on the road, we're like a rock band, man. We're just traveling all together and going from city to city. And I'll never forget when I was working for the LA Kings and traveling with them, and that's when Wayne Gretzky was there, and he made such a huge splash in Southern California at that time. I remember sitting in the VIP lounge after games at a table with Magic Johnson, who was at the games, and we would roll with the Kings and Gretzky, and it really, you felt like you were with the Rolling Stones, because you'd go to a hotel and there was all the security and all the fans, especially when you went to Canada. It was insane. It's not like that with the Sharks all the time. There's fans around, but we're in regular contact, and you kind of miss that too, because you don't have the connection this year.
They're your buddies. They're your buddies.
Ellie,
sure.
I just want to touch on the Gretzky thing. All right, in Canada, obviously, God. Like, I want to know, because, like, obviously, hockey, you could argue, is the fourth sport in the U.S. We love hockey, but, like, it's the fourth sport, maybe third. But, like, how big was Gretzky in L.A.? Was he more popular than you thought he'd be? Did he transition to the U.S. as much as you thought?
Absolutely. I think, I really believe this, that if Wayne Gretzky hadn't have gone to L.A., I'm not sure the Sharks would have happened, because he sparked an interest in the sport in the most populated state in the nation. There's more people in California than there are in Canada. And Canada is the second largest country in the world in size. So the impact he had in this state was phenomenal. And I really think that it's because of him that both the Sharks and the Ducks have been able to not only exist, but flourish. And of course, there's ups and downs from year to year, but Gretzky was really the spark that turned California and the Sun Belt into hockey. And then after that, you had the Florida teams come in, and teams like Nashville and Arizona, Winnipeg moving to Phoenix, and so on, Dallas, and so on and so on. And I really think that he had a lot to do with that, because during that time in LA, it was a big deal. I remember we had a little studio where we do the pre and intermission shows at the old Great Western Forum in Inglewood, great neighborhood, and like he would like race to get into the grounds and then get out of there as fast as you could. It's kind of like
Inglewood can be kind of rough,
like going to the Prudential Center in Newark, right? And like, you know what I'm saying. But anyway, we had a little restroom, And it was also the restroom that the celebs that would sit right at ice level along the glass would also use. So it's early in the season, and it's the Gretzky era, and I'm standing at the stall, right? And there's like 3, 4 in a row. I'm trying to clean this up here for your obviously family audience.
No, go on.
I'm standing there, and the kind of guy code is you don't look too much to the right or the left, right? You do your business and get out of there. It's not like you have a conversation there, unless you're both hammered. That's different. But I'm working, and there's a dude next to me, and he's not that tall, but he's kind of wide, and he's got his arms out and doing his thing. And I turn, it's Sylvester Stallone.
Wow.
So now I'm standing at the stall next to Sly, and so that's the way it was. And then the next game it would be, on the glass would be, Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn, and then Ronald Reagan would come to a game, and he attracted that whole LA celebrity vibe thing in a way that no hockey player ever before had, and I would argue no one ever has since.
It's kind of like what the Galaxy tried to do with Beckham, and it didn't really work.
Just worked out.
It's just not the same thing. Right. It's a different experience, and the LA crowd that went to Laker games and tried to sit courtside with Jack Nicholson and all that, they would go to Kings games because it was that same building and that same vibe. In a big outdoor 40,000 seat stadium, it's not the same. That's a luxury suite vibe, and it's different.
No, that's cool. That's so insightful, man. That was a great story.
And another one of my great experiences was flying to a Kings game once. I had to fly commercial. The team was, on the charter, but I had something else, or there was a network game that I wasn't going to do. And I jumped on the plane, and I was able to upgrade. And I sit down, and I turn around, and the guy next to me is John Candy. And he was a big Kings fan, and I already knew that. And then we spent the whole 5-hour flight to New York talking about the Kings and stuff like that. So great memories from that time. I met some really interesting people.
God bless you, man. That sounds like I should have been hanging out with you instead of Brian my whole life. Jesus.
Let me ask one more Gretzky question while we're on it, though. Now, we didn't get to see, obviously, Gretzky's like the prime of his career. We caught like the tail end of it. I'm a Rangers fan, so I got to see him when he was on the Rangers. I ended up going to a game one time with him and Messier were there. But like, how much better was he than just every other player out there? Like, what was he doing that was so phenomenal?
I think, there was so many things he could do. He's the all-time goal scorer. Mm-hmm. He's the all-time leader in assists. He has more assists than anyone else has points. Yeah. He's the all-time points leader, of course. He has, I think it's over 50 records that he still has. Mm-hmm. And he retired in 1999, and no one's broken any of them, as far as I know, since he retired. And it was a different era then. The goalies weren't as good. And, the goalie was usually the worst athlete on the team back then, and now often is the best. The game's changed for sure, and coaching's gotten better, and defenses have gotten more stingy. But I think the one thing that separated Wayne from anybody else was, and you hear this phrase used a lot, hockey IQ, and that ability to see the game in your brain. And you almost have to have it to make it to the NHL. But Wayne had it at such a high level that his hockey IQ allowed him to visualize plays much sooner before they happened than everyone else on the ice. And once the players that were smart enough playing with him figured that out, he would put them into positions so that they would make plays, and he would make plays that would result in pucks going into the net. And it was just a unique vision of seeing the sport slowed down. It's the fastest sport. There's no question. Yeah. It's the fastest sport. I mean, I don't include, NASCAR or anything like that. I'm talking about where humans are on their feet. And it's the fastest game. And he was able to slow that down in his brain into some sort of a weird slow motion way that he could see all the pieces in slow motion when everybody else was panicking because it was going so fast.
Great.
Beautiful.
I got some Sharks questions, but Ellie, if you want to take it, go for it.
It's my turn. No. Okay, so
hold on, one more thing, real quick.
Yeah.
Would you compare Sidney Crosby to Wayne Gretzky?
I would compare them and say that Sidney Crosby has a lot of those same characteristics.
It didn't go the way I want.
But it's not fair because the league and the game is so different for Sidney than it was for when Wayne was playing. It's not a fair comparison. But if you're going to ask me straight up, do I think Sidney Crosby was as good a hockey player as Wayne Gretzky? I would say that he comes up a little bit short, but he's certainly in the next group.
Yeah, it's like trying to compare Jordan and LeBron. It's two different
Jordan
times.
all day. Jordan all day.
Or I mean, Michael Jordan never scored 100 points, but Will Chamberlain.
Right.
You know,
It's eras are tough. Eras are tough. We could conclude that.
Yeah.
Go on, Ellie.
Okay, so when does your day start and when does your day end? And like, what are your pre-game operations and like post-game operations? Like, what I know you've got to do a lot of prep work. Like, what all goes into that? Like game day. Like, when does game day start? Like, I'm sure it probably starts the day before. Yeah, all that good stuff.
Well, the prep work on non-game days is ongoing. I mean, you're getting online, you're reading all the stuff, and the Sharks do a great job of, and the NHL does, of accumulating all the clips that are written about the team, and they send them all to you, and it gets narrowed down so you don't have to search for all that yourself, and that helps a lot. But basically, a normal game day in a normal season, which this isn't, I would be at the rink probably by 10 a.m. and watch the morning skate for the Sharks. Unfortunately, a few years ago, the Sharks split where they do the morning skate. They do it at their practice facility now. They used to do it at SAP Center.
They did at the tank, I thought.
Yeah, not anymore. They do it at their practice rink. So you got to go there first. And then you hear the coach, talk to some players, get some information. Then you get in the car and you go to SAP, watch the visiting team, go through their skate, talk to their coach, talk to their players, and then go back home. And for me, normally I'll get home around noon, and I like to go out for a run. We've got great weather out here typically, and that's usually a year-round opportunity, which is a blessing. And then from that point on, I'll go through my notes and fix them up and get ready to go. This is if I'm at home. It changes a little bit on the road, but it's a similar routine. And then go back to the arena by about 4:30 for a 7:30 game. Sharks home games are almost always at 7:30, so we're one of the late starting teams. And I like to get there about 3 hours ahead, start watching the East Coast games, because a lot of times those are upcoming opponents. So you want to kind of keep in tune with the league, or if if Panarin goes off in the Ranger game and scores 3 goals, then I'm going to be able to refer to that on our broadcast on the West Coast later on, because I've already seen some of that. So I like to do that. I'll get a bite to eat. We'll have a production meeting, and then by 5:45, 6 o'clock, I'm up in the broadcast booth, laying out all my stuff, getting my notes ready, my computer, and then the warm-up skates at 7. We're usually doing some pre-production, some rehearsals of promos we have to read and stuff like that. And then, we do a hit on the pregame show, usually about 7:15. And then at 7:30, we're live. And as soon as the game's over, I'm out of there, and then I drive as fast as I can and go home.
And then he's answering random Facebook messages from random.
Yeah, the weirdest thing, one of the weirdest things about what we do in sports, and it goes for writers too, but especially when you're live in the moment on the air on radio or TV, is that you get up at maybe 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and the average person, wakes up 7 or 8 o'clock, have some breakfast, go to work, right? Start working at 8 or 9. I wake up at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. I don't actually do what I'm judged on for 12 more hours. Yeah. So the last 3 or 4 hours of my day have to be my best. And that's the hardest thing at the beginning of the season to adjust to, because you get tired. As you get older, you get a little more tired, and you have to take care of yourself in a different way. But you have to be at your best at the end of your day. And most of us are like cocktailing, as some of us might be right now.
Boy, Randy.
Cheers.
Cheers, buddy. No, you're right. Because, like, usually us workers at the end of the day are like, I'm mailing it in. So I just, no, you're right.
Can't mail it in, and if you do, you get called out now on social media, right? You
Right,
scroll
exactly.
once,
Yes.
like there's 9 guys tweeting you. Like, come on, get a life.
I do
You want me to follow
have
you around at your job as a plumber and then tweet every time you screw up?
I do have a shark question, Ellie. I'm not stealing this from you because I don't know if you're gonna have this one. To me, the logo in hockey is so important, and like I think that like jersey, I love hockey jerseys because like I'm kind of overweight and they fit well, and I can wear basketball jerseys. So like I kind of veer towards hockey jerseys because they're like sweater and I'm shaped. You know, I have like a pudding body or whatever. So. Like the Sharks logo.
Not big on the trim golf polo.
Oh no, I'm a soccer fan, MLS, and I have 2 Red Bull jerseys, and they outline everything. It is horrifying to watch. It's like a lava lamp just moving when I'm jumping up and down. Enough about me though. So the logo is so important in hockey, and like the Sharks logo is just so cool. It just
It is.
I'd hate to bring it up, but like it does like the Penguins in an igloo. It works. The Penguins logo, the Sharks one, San Jose, the Shark Tank, everything just works. So when you guys were building that team in like 1991, what were other options for the team name? And
well, there were a lot. There was a ton of different names thrown out there. One of the big ones that they thought, and it would have actually been ahead of its time, because way back in the late 80s, early 90s, American Airlines made San Jose one of their hubs. And the thought was when the Sharks came to be that they would become the San Jose Americans because no one had that name, right? You know, and now it seems really bad. But back then it was like, hey, this is new. You know, they weren't thinking, you know, a lot of people weren't thinking in terms of a mascot or marketing and stuff like that. Thankfully, that never happened.
Yeah, that's just.
But there was Hammerheads. That was another one.
That's cool.
When it got 2 Sharks. But, what they did with the logo was very clever. There's a guy named Matt Levin, and he was the marketing guru who was hired by the original ownership group. And they did a lot of focus groups. And what they did was they went into the inner city in Oakland. And at that time, you know, if you go back and look at hip hop videos from the early 90s, late 80s, you know, when rap was first happening and the whole inner city, not only music vibe was going on, but the clothing vibe, whether it was FUBU or whatever it was happening at that time, a lot of that impetus was coming out of the inner city. So they went into Oakland and had these focus groups and did all these things about colors and logos and names. And a lot of that data that came out of the inner city went into the decision-making with the Sharks, particularly with the logo and the colors.
That's so cool.
Obviously,
that is so cool.
They hit on something that now here we are, this is the 30th year of the Sharks. 30 years later, that logo, and it's had some tweaks, and I love how you're representing, Ellie. It's had some tweaks. Like
I can get the original. I can get the original.
Okay. Awesome. It still works. And actually the throwback, the original, and that works too. And that's rare for pro sports. And, you know, there's some iconic logos in the NHL. Like I think the Toronto Maple Leafs is one that'll never change. The Montreal Canadiens.
The Blackhawk.
But the Blackhawks. And they've done a great job too. There's the old school original. And it's changed a little bit more orange in it, and it's been tweaked. But
yeah, orange is like the tertiary color.
Yeah, the basic logo still works, and the color still works. It seemed trendy at the time, but it's stood the test of time.
It reminds me of the Charlotte Hornets with the teal and purple, and at the time people weren't for it. All of a sudden, it became like those Hornets jerseys are like iconic now.
Yeah,
those like '90s Hornets jerseys. So. Yeah. That's a cool story, how they did that with focus groups. What a smart idea. Jeez. God, I got to get into this business, Randy. Help me out, will you? So, go on, Ellie.
Okay, so next question. Were you sad when Pavs left?
Yeah, Joe Pavelski was just a tremendous person, number one. He was a great captain on a team that had Joe Thornton in the dressing room, and Joe's a huge personality, and
so I've heard.
It always kind of was his dressing room, even when Pavelski was there. But he figured out a way to tiptoe around that, maneuver around it, and still be a respected leader. And the thing that made him the best as a leader was that he did it on the ice. It wasn't like rah-rah speeches and pumping the guys up with talk. It was performance, and I think his sweater will hang in the Sharks have never retired a jersey in 30 years, which is rare.
That makes sense. Jonathan Cheechoo's not up there?
Nope.
No. Well, I think this is here's my prediction. I think it's the first one will go Marleau, and he's still playing.
Yes.
I think your number 12 will be the first one in the rafters. I don't have inside info on this because I don't even know who decides, but I think he'll be the first one to go up. And then I think Joe Thornton will go after that.
Yeah, Jumbo for sure.
And I think eventually at some point, Joe Pavelski will go up there too. He's just a guy who at every level, even when he was a kid playing hockey, was told two things. You're too small and you're too slow. So then when he was a kid, he made the team, became the captain, and won the championship. High school, same thing for his high school team. You're too small and you're too slow. Made the team, became captain, won the championship. Then he went to the University of Wisconsin, Division I, NCAA. You're no scholarship. You're not going to make it. You're too small and you're too slow. Made the team, became the captain, won the NCAA championship. USHL, same thing. The only level that he hasn't repeated yet is one part of it. He came to the NHL. We drafted him in the 6th round. That's low. He's like 200 and some, high 100s, low 200s draft. If you're drafted in the 6th round, you're probably not going to make it. Made it, became the captain, and the only thing he hasn't done is won the Stanley Cup, and he was in the final last year for Dallas. So remarkable person.
Now, with the Wisconsin team, I don't know how far back. Was that the same team that Stepan was on?
It would have been before that.
Before that, yeah, I don't know.
It would have been before that. I'm not sure of the Badgers season, who else was on that roster with Joe, but
Let's not forget, too, former Pittsburgh Penguin Patrick Marleau. I mean, he did come there.
Who can forget the Marleau era in Steel City?
I do want to touch on that because I'm a Penguin fan. And in 2016, the Penguins beat the Sharks in the Stanley Cup. Now, that was the only time the Sharks have been to a cup. And I hear from a lot of people, I'd rather not get there at all than get there and lose. Right? So in 2001, as a Yankee fan, I would have rather not even have been in the World Series than lose to the Diamondbacks. Did you get that?
Yeah, but that's the Yankees had won 83.
Yeah, right.
We need more.
Different,
I want more. I want more.
You don't understand. I don't think you understand how bad San Jose wants a cup. I don't think you get it.
That's what I'm asking you guys. So, Randy, did you get the vibe that they were, I don't want to say happy to be there, but they wouldn't have gave that experience up, even though the heartbreak and stuff, it sucked. What was the vibe?
I don't think any of the players, and especially the fan base, I remember the night just vividly that they eliminated St. Louis in the Western Conference Final. And for the first time ever, the Sharks were going to the Stanley Cup. And downtown San Jose was, as the fans piled out of the arena, thankfully the deciding game was at home. It was crazy, and people were crying and hugging strangers. And, the amount of civic pride that comes from your sports teams came to the forefront in a way that it hadn't since back in the 90s when the Sharks upset Detroit, when they weren't even supposed to be in the playoffs and they knocked off the number 1 seed Red Wings back in '94. So, no, I don't think any of those players would say, I don't want to be there. I'd rather not have been there. The Penguins their speed was just better. They were a faster team. They were better. They were more prepared. They had players who'd been there, more players who knew what it took, and it just didn't turn out, and they lost in 6. But no, I don't think anybody would ever say that they'd rather not have gone to that than lost.
I like how I compared the Yankees, who were going for a 4-peat that year.
Yeah, That makes no damn sense. Oh, I have a question, Randy. So were you surprised, I mean, when you think California, you don't think hockey. Like, let's just be honest. I mean, I'm a local. I'm from here, being a diehard hockey fan. But were you surprised at like how over time, like just how diehard the Sharks fan base has become? Like, I mean, I would literally die for that team, basically. Like, I would die for Patrick Marleau. Like, he's the man. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, were you surprised to see how like passionate Californians could be and like, you know, come behind these teams and be super supportive and be at every game? Did that surprise you?
Well, I guess it did, but in a way, and this goes back to earlier in our conversation when I talked about starting that basically a fan-driven organization to try and bring hockey to San Jose. We always felt that San Jose, which is the third largest city in California, it's bigger than San Francisco. Most people wouldn't realize that in population. It trails only Los Angeles and San Diego, so it's number 3. It didn't really have its own soul when it came to pro sports. There was a soccer team, the Earthquakes, but you know, that league back in those days, and MLS certainly has made huge strides and is one of the 5 major leagues now in my view. But back then, they weren't as significant an entity or a team as far as the fabric of the community in San Jose. But the fans in San Jose, and we did the research when I was, you know, trying to put that all together back in the late 80s. The majority of 49er fans were from San Jose area. The majority of Giants and Giants fans were from that area. Not as much Warriors and A's because of the distance that needed to be traveled to get to those games. But the money was there. Silicon Valley was in its infancy, a little past the infancy. It was starting to become an economic engine, but they didn't have a team. They didn't have that. You turn on ESPN and watch the highlights and the San Jose blanks. And when the Sharks came, it gave the city that for the first time. And then in year 3, for them to knock off the Red Wings and go to the second round of the playoffs and then go to Game 7, eventually losing to Toronto, it galvanized civic pride. And I know that sounds like a hokey thing, civic pride,
Go for it.
It isn't. It matters. And it matters in towns like Pittsburgh. And it matters in towns like Columbus. And it matters in places like San Jose, where it's something that brings strangers together that have a common interest and a love for one thing. And it's why Yankee fans would hug and high-five one another in the Bronx, no matter what other borough they were from after a World Series win. And it was the same in San Jose. When the Sharks won those big playoff games in the early 90s, it brought people together that had never had a common reason to want to have joy over a sports team before. And then the next morning, turn on ESPN and damn it, their city was first story, and this was the huge upset in sports. And that's what really galvanized it. And it's been pretty much a great success story ever since. And as all things, there's ups and downs, and there's good years and bad, and eras that are great and not so great. And you know, who knows what this year will bring. But for the most part, the last 28 years since they moved from their first 2 years at the Cow Palace in San Francisco while their new rink was being built, ever since being in San Jose, they've become a huge part of the community, a real fabric that brings a lot of people together.
That's really cool. Ellie, you got any more? Because I got a couple.
You wait. No. But I will say, no, that's so true, like about hugging random friends, like 2019, you know, the playoffs when we had 2 Game 7s, we had Game 7s against Las Vegas, we had Game 7 against Blues. I was at Game 5 where they forced Game 6, and like, because you know, everyone, you can kind of feel the atmosphere at the tank. Some people are like, oh crap, this might be it. Like, oh, you know, well, they tried, but then you know, there's like people like me, like, no, we're gonna do it. Like, this is our year, and they, you know, they won that game. I think it was like 5-1 or like something crazy or whatever. They forced Game 6, and like I remember like just everyone in the stage just like high-fiving each other and just like being so stoked, like, yes, we got one more game, like we have another chance, like Game 6. And then, you know, when it goes to Game 7, people just lose their friggin' minds. Which, being there, how intense is a Game 7 like at the tank? Well, they're all intense, but there's never, and I've done 2 World Cups for ESPN and ABC in soccer. And I've been at a lot of, I've been to a perfect game. I've seen a lot of amazing sporting events in my life. I've been very fortunate, Super Bowls and World Series and NBA championships, but I've never been to a single sporting event that was more impactful
and was more incredible than the Game 7 against the Vegas Golden Knights.
I know.
You guys are down 3-0 that game, right?
3-1 in the series.
Won the series.
Yeah.
Battled back to force a Game 7, down 3-0 with 10 minutes to go. The equivalent of, let's say, in the NFL, you're down 21-0, right? Because 3 is 3 touchdowns, right? I always get a kick out of people who complain that hockey doesn't have enough scoring. They say, yeah, you go to an NFL game, it's like 21-14. That's way better than no, that's 3-2.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
It's the same thing. And so it's 3-0 with 10 minutes to go, and then the Sharks catch a break on a major penalty call, and they have a 5-minute power play, and they not only tied it, they went ahead, only to give that lead up with less than a minute to go, and then in overtime, and then they won it in overtime. I've never experienced anything like that before, let alone broadcast it. That was the real fortune for me. I got to call that game, and nothing else has come close. But Game 7s are always special. That one, the only thing that could top it would be if the Sharks were to win a Stanley Cup in Game 7.
Yeah, absolutely. No, one more. 2 more. Okay, so speaking of our other Joe, Jumbo is gone. Was that another like gut punch with Jumbo leaving?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've had a series of, Patrick Marleau leaving. He's back now.
Oh my God, that has been the biggest like trauma of my life. Like
Joe Thornton leaving.
Didn't understand.
Joe Pavelski leaving, and then Joe Thornton. I mean, in succession. We're talking about if you're building a Mount Rushmore of the Sharks, there's a good chance, if not all 3 are on it. So it's been a very difficult era for the Shark fan base to see iconic players leave. But Joe's the best player the Sharks have ever had. So,
Jumbo's the best. I you can't. I mean, I had his poster hanging up in my college dorm, like. Jumbo's, as much as I'm a diehard Marleau fan, but like there's something about Jumbo and like, his playoff beard and like, he's just kind of got this, he's got this great off-ice personality and persona too that like us as fans like just love and are so drawn to him. And it's just like, you can't not like Jumbo. Like there's just, people complain about Marleau. People are kind of like, like Paz, but like I've never heard anybody like even if not Sharks fans, like say anything bad about Joe Thornton. Like everyone just loves him. He's just one of those players.
It'd be great if Randy jumps in with a horrible story right now about Joe.
I know, right? Well, actually, he killed a puppy. But no.
Let me tell you about Joe Thornton.
First, he tortured it.
Right? Yeah.
We were fortunate as a franchise to get him when we did because he was in his prime for a decade.
Yeah.
And he was the best passer in the NHL. I've never seen anybody pass the puck the way he did.
Right.
And we were just lucky to watch him do what he did. And you know what? I hope it works out for him that he wins the Stanley Cup in Toronto.
And then comes back.
That would be a great way for him to ride off into the sunset, which is right behind me.
Right, yeah.
That happens a lot with players. They go in hockey more than anything. I feel they go to the team just to win the cup and go back, which good for them. Good for them.
You want to see
the Ranger.
You want to see your favorite players win, which is why. Oh God, the whole Marleau saga, like when that first time he was gone, I almost died. Number one, my husband's like, why are you so upset? I'm like, you don't get it. You don't get it. You grew up in Louisiana. You don't understand. Like, shut up, leave me alone. And then, then he was back and then he's gone and then now he's back. And I was like, I'm sure you were there, when he was like in tears, the whole stadium stood up and gave him a standing ovation for like 1 minute, his first like home game on the away team. Like, and he's crying, the fans are crying. I was crying at home, crying, like everyone's crying. Like, he's been the fan favorite for how many years for the San Jose Sharks? Like, I can't even count, but it's just like, you guys have a huge impact. Like, I think more than you guys think. Like, you, Randy, just like that whole franchise, like that, the impact you have is like, when you think of the Bay Area, like that's our team. It's not just San Jose's team. That's the Bay Area's team. Like, you see Niners fans at Sharks games, you see Ace fans, you see Giants fans, you see Warriors fans. Like, everyone can come together over the Sharks and that we hate LA. You know what I'm saying? It's not like down here where it's like, oh, we got LA in the keys. It's like, no, LA can suck it. We're all going really hard for San Jose and the Bay Area right now. I'm not kidding. I'm serious. And
He's just like, yep. Yeah.
you know, like if you wear some King stuff up in the Bay Area, it's like you better take that off. Even like non-hockey fans will be like, get that shit out of here. Like, you do
Yeah. Randy, I don't think you've ever been asked this. I'm going to go out on a limb and don't think you've ever been asked this. What's it like announcing in a video game?
It's very tedious.
Really? Yeah, I want to know. Like, what if you? I'm sorry. Like, we're keeping it. If you have like a couple, like, how is that? How does that work?
Well, when I did video games was probably going back now 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
I haven't done it for a while, and I'm sure the technology has improved. But when I did the NHL 2K series, which ran for about 4 years, the first year of games that Drew Menda and I did, it took me 125 hours to do the first game.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
And they would only record it. They would only do it 5 hours at a time. So I just had, for a month, I was going to a studio and doing that. So it was a lot of work. I'm sure it's a lot easier now because technology has improved, and you might even be able to do it from home with a microphone. I don't know, but you're just talking in little bursts and saying names, and then all that gets married together by the processor and the technology. It's fun when it's done and your kids are playing a game that their dad's on. I mean, like you're like the coolest dad forever, at least until they stop playing video games. But yeah, it was a long, laborious process, and it's not for the faint of heart. At least when I did it, you've got to be willing to understand that you're going to be doing it for a long time. And when you're doing that for 5 straight hours of doing calls and names and stuff like that, like you just want to go home.
Now, you don't gotta say what you got paid, but was the check worth it or no? You wouldn't do it again.
At the time, it was great. It was fine. But the best non-Sharks gig I ever got was the only movie I've ever been in. Yeah, which was Disney Inside Out, and they contacted me because they wanted a Bay Area hockey announcer in the movie.
So cool.
The movie was cast. The theme of the movie was a family in San Francisco. Yep. So if they were going to show a hockey game on TV, John Lasseter, who actually was a friend of mine, he was the producer from of Inside Out with the Disney people, and they contacted me and said, "Do you want to do this?" And I went over to the Pixar studios and did a day of voiceover, and that movie won the Academy Award. Yeah. So the only movie I was ever in. Wait, let me see if I've got it here.
Do you have an Academy Award?
Yeah, did they give you one?
Hold on.
Hang on. No, I can't find my hand microphone. But for only movie I ever did, Oscar, drop mic. Right?
Honestly,
I'm not. There's nowhere else
Randy.
to go.
It's like
no.
It was 4 or 5 years ago, but I'm sure that Oscar is still in the mail. I'm sure it'll get here. But no, that thing was great. And there's a really interesting thing when you're in movies or television series called residuals.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Look it up. It's been very, very good for me.
Is that because it won an Oscar?
Well, it was just it continues to be viewed by so many people.
Hello, it's on Disney Plus now.
And thank you, Disney Plus. So there's a whole new stream.
I was watching it, and I remember I heard your voice. I was like, why do I know that voice? Because I was, because the little girl played hockey, and I was like, why? I was like, why does that voice seem so familiar?
No, I'm in a total of about 8 seconds of the movie. Took me a whole bit to record my stuff.
I know.
And then when they did the trailers, I was all over the trailers that came out on social media before the movie was released. They would release these 2.5-minute trailers, and my play-by-play was all I thought, I'm going to be like one of the biggest things in this movie. I mean, it's just unreal. And then the movie came out. I went to the premiere in Hollywood. They invited me down, and I sat next to Billy Crystal, who's not in the movie, but he was invited by Disney. He's a Hollywood guy, and these Pink was there, and the guy sitting next to me, I didn't know who he was. Just a small little dude. Turns out it was Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers. And he was there with his kids, and they were sitting next to me. And he says, "Oh yeah, I'm in the movie too. I do this voice." And I go, "Oh, okay, cool." And then I watched the movie, and there was my son, and like this little burst of play-by-play comes on at the beginning of the movie of me, and I said, "Yeah, that's one of my things, but there'll be much more." And then I was never on again.
I picture you walking the red carpet like the star and just.
Oh yeah, no, we bought new stuff. We bought I think I went like Hugo Boss for that
Oh,
one.
that's phenomenal.
Oh,
It's like-
okay.
Seconds of fame.
Picture Flea tapping you on the shoulder. Yeah, I'm in the movie too. Yeah, all right, buddy.
Yeah.
But
All
I'm
right,
the
but back it
guy.
up. Right, yeah.
And he's like, I'm with the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I said, so drums? I think a little guy. No, bass. Like I didn't know.
All right, so we have a final segment. It's called Gun to Your Head, Randy. It's like 2 questions we ask you,
Okay.
and you got to pick a winner at the end, all right? They're weird questions, kind of like a Would You Rather, but there's a little wordplay involved, all right?
I got you.
All right, so I'll go first. Would you give up your broadcast career for a Broadway career?
I would give my broadcast career up for a Broadway career, absolutely, if I could sing. I'm incredible at karaoke, and Broadway is all about musical, so I'd have to be in a musical.
All right, fair enough.
How about
Last one.
Slapshot, the hockey musical?
The musical. All right, that works.
Yes.
All right, would you rather be known as the greatest announcer ever but never announce a Stanley Cup game-winning goal, or not be known as the greatest announcer but the Sharks win the Stanley Cup and you announce it?
Absolutely. I could care less what I'm regarded by everybody else as greatest or not, because there's a lot of great ones. I would give everything up to call a Shark Stanley Cup win.
Okay, fair enough. Brian?
Would you rather get forechecked or have a massive forehead?
You know what? Forecheck, back check, I'll take paycheck.
I like
There you
this
go.
guy. Go, Brian.
Ooh.
Would you rather get denied on Shark Tank or have to swim through a tank of sharks?
I'll go Shark Tank. I am not good swimming through a tank of sharks. The other one would be heights. I'm not good at heights.
Yeah.
And I sit up in a press box. Go figure.
Ellie, you're up.
Okay. Would you rather have SJ Sharky as your permanent roommate, like he's in your house 24/7, or would you rather be in his costume for 2 months straight?
Oh, that's a lose-lose. Have you ever been near him? That costume stinks.
That costume is older than me. I know.
It smells. How can it
I
not?
know.
What do you think? He walks into the dry cleaner and hands that thing off? Dry cleaner said, no, we don't clean that. We'll clean your Uggs, but we won't clean that. No, I don't want to go anywhere near any of that.
All right,
I'm out.
go on.
Oh, come on. Okay.
Randy, really quick, Stanley Cup winner, who you got?
For this year,
Yep.
I think we're going to have a repeat. I think the Tampa Bay Lightning are going to win it again.
I agree with that. Randy,
Yeah.
this is awesome. Thanks a lot for coming on. This is really cool. Hey, you want to... Oh, yeah, sorry. Pick a winner.
Yeah,
Oh, my
who
God.
won?
Pick
Yeah.
one. What was your favorite question?
Oh, the
last
favorite
segment.
gun to the head question would be: would you give up being known as the most famous announcer,
Damn it.
You know what?
or would you rather do a Stanley Cup? That's the best
Ricky,
one.
God bless you. There's times I need a victory, and this is a time. Hey, thanks a lot for coming out. Really appreciate it. If we
Yeah,
could get
thanks,
you
Paul.
on, if you would come on again later on, that'd be awesome, by the way. This is really cool.
All right. I'd be happy to, and I sure hope you recorded this.
Randy, thanks a lot. This
Okay.
is
I won't be
really
weird.
cool.
I promise.
Enjoy your dinner. It's only 7 o'clock out there. Enjoy your Friday night, buddy.
We're having Dungeness crab, fresh out of the Pacific Ocean.
Ooh, I was
I
about
don't
to
know what that
say it's
is.
crab season because
I
you're
don't
not
know
from
what that
over
is.
here. You don't know.
All right,
You don't know
I'll
it's
have
crab
a-
season. And my mom like this is like her time of the year. She's like, my crabs. Yes.
I'll have
It's
a
like,
pork
okay.
roll, egg, and cheese. That's a horrible night.
Yeah. Well, here right now it's about 8 degrees outside. So
Yeah.
Gross.
Randy,
Yeah,
I love how you...
I heard you getting ready for a nor'easter, so
Yeah.
good luck with
yeah,
that.
pretty much.
I also love how you added comedy to this episode by saying that if Panarin scores 3 goals, that was really rich of you, because we know that ain't never happened. All right, buddy. Thanks a lot. We'll let you go, man. Really appreciate it.
All right, take care, guys.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Randy. Nice to meet
Take care.
you.